true. I used to overlook. Finally caught on a hook. Lost all my strength, so long in length, devoted to who I truly love. Carry me away, carry me far away, carry me away, somewhere sincerely, somewhere sincerely,
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Third Impact Anime. I am your not usual host, Bill. Hopefully I have all my memories intact. And with me today is Tobias
Yo yo!
and Edwin.
Yo!
Maybe Yo-Yo could help us guide through the wonderful maze that is the show we're going to be talking about, Kaiba. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kaiba? Are you guys going to be talking about the character Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh?
Boo.
Wow, I could understand that confusion, and I did love that English dub actor for Kaiba. We are not going to be talking about, so no Hearth of the Cards jokes from me. No Hearthstone talk.
Oh man.
One day. We are going to be talking about the 2008 series, Kaiba, which was directed by our favorites, Masaaki Yuasa. But before we get into that, let's start talking about what we've been up to, what we've been playing, what we've been watching. So, Edwin, why don't you go first?
I've been quarantined out my mind. I've been playing Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Minecraft, and I've been watching World War II documentaries.
Nice. So you've not gotten sucked into the Final Fantasy VII remake Black Hole, like everybody else.
I don't play RPGs.
Isn't Crystal Chronicles an RPG?
I was forced to do that for mid-shelf gaming.
You were forced? You were forced
Yeah.
to play Crystal Chronicles?
Yes, because 2 out of 3 majority rule vote.
Did you guys play with the Game Boy Advances, Daisy Chained, and all that stuff?
I couldn't find mine.
Oh no!
I think I got to play that game multiplayer once, way back in high school. Managed to round up all the hardware needed, and I played it for like an hour, and that was my entire Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles experience. That one game.
It's getting a remake this year, so if you want to get it on Switch, I'll tag along with you.
They keep saying they're going to do it, but
No, it's confirmed
not.
for this year.
Well, let's not count our chickens for they hatch there, buddy. We'll see if they actually put it out. But no,
I'll put $5 down. You want to put $5 down that's coming out this year?
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
$5.
$5.
Okay, and I am your third-party witness. So if they announce let's say if they don't, let's say the bet rules are Nintendo has to either announce Crystal Chronicles coming to Switch either sometime in June or at least
No, it's got to be out. It's got to be out in 2020.
Oh,
It's got to be out in 2020.
Okay, they can't just announce it. They can't just...
Because it's not going to be only on Switch, it's going to be on all other platforms, so we can't just restrict it to Nintendo.
Yeah, man. Xbox One. Chronicles.
I'm not sure about that. Xbox seems to get one token game from Square like every 5 years. Whether it was like Kingdom Hearts 3 finally came over there, or what was it?
Final Fantasy 13 on 360.
I think they need to put it on PS4, but have it where you need to have Vitas to use as the controllers.
Ooh,
What a dream!
Sell people on those Vitas.
Give the authentic experience of playing Crystal Chronicles. I like it. Tobias, what have you been up to?
Let's see. Still wrapping up FF7. I watched Jackie Chan movie with you, Police Story.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Kind of like I told you, there's a lot of genres that I really enjoy. I just don't ever get around to actually watching. And I really like kung fu, like martial arts style movies. I've never not liked the one I've seen. I just never get around to actually partaking in it. So I think watching that, it reminded me that I did watch Drunken Master a few years back and really enjoyed that as well. I think I'm going to take this opportunity to, see what Canopy has to offer as far as martial arts movies and these Jackie Chan and then Bruce Lee movies.
Yeah, I have to personally thank Grant from the Blade Licking Thieves podcast. I've been really getting into their backlog. And so they're talking about these kind of Japanese, Hong Kong movies got me really interested in all these kind of kung fu action movies.
Mm-hmm.
That and my brother is into the Criterion Collection stuff. So with those two factors in mind, I've just been diving into a lot of Japanese live action movies. Like recently I watched Tokyo Drifter, which is like a really cool 60s gangster movie about an assassin that wants to leave the mob, but he keeps getting dragged back in. And he wears a fabulous powder blue suit throughout the entire movie, which looks really good. Just all the pastel 60s colors in that movie look really cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's basically
I think that director, Seijun Suzuki, is pretty well known for his striking visual aesthetic.
Yeah, and fun fact, Tobias, I guess because I'm on this episode, he directed Legend of the Golden Babylon, the Pink Jacket Lupin III movie.
Of course, we got to bring it back to Lupin. It's pretty much a Lupin podcast.
This is your one Lupin mention this podcast.
No, that won't be the last time we'll mention Lupin.
Yeah,
slightly.
If you're a Third Impact anime listener and you're not engaged at all into Lupin at this point, I don't know what's wrong with you. We should have indoctrinated you into Lupin at this point with how many times I've brought it up.
You would think.
So I think that's what we've all been up to as of late. So, gentlemen, why don't we get into our main discussion, Kaiba.
Once upon a time was there an old and lonely tree. By him folks have come and gone, and he was standing still. No carved names, no dancing prayers to keep sorrows away. He dreamed to have all lives and hearts and known them only so. Children's laughter, tears for joy, newborn babies too. Our peace swallowed birds and beasts to fill his lonely soul.
So, gentlemen, Kaiba came out in the year of 2008, specifically during the spring season of 2008. Do you guys want to guess which shows were going on at the time?
I don't have to guess. You guys weren't even alive in 2008. You don't know.
I was a young little Baba.
Y'all were just babies in 2008. You're all watching those American cartoons. Y'all know nothing about Japanese animation. 2008.
About no anime.
Yeah. So 2008, that was still, we were still in Naruto territory. I think that was I think we were in Shippuden territory by that point. Bleach, I think, was still ongoing, maybe close to wrapping up.
Well, nope. It was not wrapping up. It was probably in the midst.
No, it's like 2010 when it starts to wrap up, right? Like a couple years later.
Yeah, when they were forced to wrap up.
Well, by 2008, everyone had forgotten about Bleach, except for the die-hard Bleach fans. So it might as well have wrapped up.
I was still watching Bleach.
Well, yeah, again, the die-hard weebs, like Edwin.
Oh, good point.
Also, speaking of super weeby shows, I have currently on what I have here. Soul Eater was a new show going on in spring 2008, and Code Geass: Lelouch the Rebellion was in the midst of its second season at the time, and also Vampire Knight. By
I think Dragon Ball Kai was not quite starting. I think that's 2009. It was right before DB Kai. This would have been a year after Gurren Lagann as well. You mentioned Code Geass, yeah. I think a certain Magical Index started that year as well.
I believe so.
I think there was a lot of slice of life around then.
Yeah, I think that's when what's that?
Horadora
What's that?
and I think
K-On was about 2008, 2009. Yeah.
I think there was Baka and Test as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just kind of giving everybody like a time frame of when Kaiba was coming out at the time. Now, let's see. Do you guys want to go into the cast, or should I just go into the plot? How would we like to order this?
Cast.
Yeah, let's go into the cast here. So, like Bill mentioned, this is 2008. So you got the principals here, and a couple of stuff from around that time, but they also got a couple of recent credits as well. So as the main character, Kaiba / Warp, we have Hoko Kuwashima. She was Tomoyo, Sakagami, and Clannad, which I think was what about that time, right? The Clannad adaptation that was like something like 2010.
No, Clannad was a little earlier. It was like 2006. I think this is around.
Okay.
I think this is around.
Like the movie?
What's the other show by Key?
Air? Air, is that right?
No, not Air. Angel Beats.
Oh, yeah.
Was that
Right.
This is around
that was
Angel
the
Beats.
Type of studio?
Yeah, JC staff.
Yeah, they did all the key shows for a while. But anyway.
So, like, all those, like, dating sim stuff, like, that was all over the internet way back when these things were first out. But, like, the anime adaptations, I do not care about any of that at all. It all blends together. So it's like, people keep talking about Clannad. Like, when did this come out? Is this a new thing? Is this an old thing? I don't know, man. I'm too old for this crap. You kids and your date sim.
Thanks.
Kuwashima was also Sango and Inuyasha, maybe a little more recognizable to some of you. She also is Kagura and Azumanga Daioh, best show ever. And she was actually a few roles in the Lupin specials. I told you we'd bring it back. A couple of Lupin specials. She had various roles in, not any one particular character. So, as our secondary character, Nero, she was played by Mamiko Noto, who was most recently in Karmat and Golden Kamuy. Yakumo Tsukamoto in School Rumble. She was Isa Himegami in a certain Magical Index, like I said, kind of 2008, similar time period. Benton in the Eccentric Family from 2013. And another sort of classic series, Angelo Moa from Sergeant Frog or Korodo Gunso. Speaking of prolific voice actresses, we have Romy Park as Popo. Park was, I think, probably the most prolific as Edward Elric in the Full Metal Alchemist series, but she's had a number of roles all throughout the anime canon. She's also, I think, Zoe, is that what it is? And Attack on Titan. Also Ragyo in Kill la Kill, both from like 2012, 2013. Also, long-standing role as Temari in Naruto. Then we've got as the character Vanilla, Hisao Egawa, who was Iwao Shimabukuro in Ippo Rising. Is that one of those Hajime no Ippo?
Boxers.
Yeah, boxing anime.
Yeah.
Egawa was also Munehisa Iwai as the airsoft gun owner in Persona 5, and Goldie Marg and Gao Gaigar, as well as another Naruto role, Killer Bee from Shippuden. So those voice actors got a wide what's the word I'm looking for, a repertoire as well. Then as best character Hyo-Hyo, we have Wasabi Mizuta, currently the voice of Doraemon in that long-running children's anime. Kind of similarly, she played Ash's Tepig in the Pokemon Black and White series, both the movies of the time and the television series. And then lastly, as Chronico, the most sad character of the show, we have Chiba Saito. Also had a number of roles over the past decade. Natsume Hinata in Sergeant Frog, again. Dr. Shoko in Kyoso Giga, another great surreal anime you all should check out. She was also Becky in Pani Pony Dash, and Homura. Right. Yeah, Pani Pony Dash is, I think it's one of those things that just kind of got swept under the radar for a lot of people.
Pretty good.
It's a pretty good comedy.
I think it may be a little too similar to a bunch of sort of slice of life comedies of the time. Maybe that's why it's a little forgettable to some people, but I mean, it's been a while since I watched it, but I enjoyed what I did see. Very funny. And lastly, Saito was Homura in Madoka Magica. I don't think anyone's ever heard of that show either.
Nope. I think that's just buried underneath all the other anime that came out.
Yep.
All right. With the crew, we have Masaaki Yuasa. You know him. He's the writer, director, did storyboard for the show. Everybody knows him. Probably the reason why the majority of people watch the show in the first place. And then after that, we have Nobutake Ito, and he's the character designer. He did the key animation on Adolescence of Utena, Sonic the Hedgehog movie OVA, Summer Wars, and he's also worked on pretty much every Yuasa project. After that, we have Ryo Kono, and that's the art director. Has also worked as the art director on Carol and Tuesday, the Mob Psycho franchise, Don't Make Cry Baby, and is also the assistant art director on Metropolis and the background art on Perfect Blue.
Okay.
After that, we have the music by Kiyoshi Yoshida, who's done the music for Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Very, very good soundtrack as well.
Yeah.
Also done... The opening and end themes were by Seira Kagami, who's an actress and model. And then finally, we have Eun-young Choi, who's done the storyboard, writer, episode director. You know she's always with Yuasa.
And she is as of this recording, she's the new president of Yuasa Studios, Science Arrow.
Yep.
I have high hopes for her.
I have high hopes for Science Arrow too. I know Yuasa has a couple other projects, so he's not completely done, but I think with her as the new captain or leader of Science Arrow, I think things will go really well.
I mean, I think it's important to remember that she's got a wide skill set. Where Yuasa is mostly director, he's done a lot of animation, key animation, that's sort of he grew up, and so has Chira, to be honest. But in her regard, she's had her fingers in a lot more pots than he has, I feel like, over the past 5, 6, 7 years.
People have always wanted her to be more involved in more shows, and it's finally her time to shine.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would like to see her direct more stuff and have more of her work. But I do kind of appreciate the fact that she is the more, I guess, maybe not responsible is the best word, but she feels like she has a greater responsibility. I kind of mentioned in the Eizouken episode, which should be out by now, that she's kind of the Kanamori to Yuasa's, what's the kid's name, Midori. And I kind of feel like that's the case here, where she feels like more of the, that sense of, sort of keeps him grounded, I guess, is what I'm trying to look for. Overall.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I feel. Again, I don't know these people, in real life. I don't really know how that works, but that's kind of the impression I get based on their relationship dynamic and, her credits to these works.
And through interviews. She's done a number of interviews promoting their works. Like she did interviews for Ride Your Wave and a couple of their other projects. So.
I didn't really think of it back then, but yeah, she did do the interview for Ride Your Wave, and she's been pretty present in a lot of the interviews and video. I kind of wonder if Yuasa was maybe prepping her as the new face of the company, knowing that he was going to be leaving here not too long.
That's a possibility because even though it's a flawed way of doing things, people like to have a face to an entity. Because it helps sell whatever you're doing, whether it be a movie or music or whatever.
I will say in the Ride Your Wave interview, she's very charismatic. It was a very good interview to watch, to pay attention to. So I think if anything else, she's going to be a really good face for the company for sure.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. So, thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, thank you for saving the audience from having to hear me butcher Japanese names. So.
Anytime.
So why don't we get into what is Kaiba actually about? So Kaiba is a dystopian sci-fi tale about a boy named Warp who travels around the universe of Kaiba in hopes to regain his memory and find a red-haired girl of his past, which he has a picture of this girl in a locket that he owns. Within the world of Kaiba, people are able to store their memories/identities onto memory chips, which allows people to change their bodies at will, if you have the wealth to pay for it, leading to less fortunate citizens to have to sell their bodies, literally their bodies, to the wealthy and powerful. So if, let's say I had a very attractive body, but I was poor, I could basically take my memory chip out and sell my body to an upper crust, wealthier man, for example. Memories can also be selectively deleted if a person chooses to, or in other cases, they give their memories away for profit, as we saw in at least one of the episodes that we'll probably talk about in Kaiba. I would say Kaiba is a story in two parts. Part one is at least the first 6 episodes, where Warp is meeting different people across the universe and seeing the effects of the technology, such as the memory chip, and how people use it, and how it affects people's lives. And part 2, which is the final 6 episodes of Kaiba, is the resolutions to Warp's story. Kaiba uses technology to illustrate its themes and ideas, from loss, death, what happens when we give in to our desires, and how those actions affect people around us. It also examines identity, who we are, the use of power, and greed. Very typical themes and topics in classic sci-fi fiction that we've seen in books, movies, and television. And so with the plot out of the way, why don't we start off with how did we all find Kaiba in the first place? Because when it came out in spring of 2008, no one was really talking about it. It wasn't really licensed. And at the time, Yuasa was a complete unknown at the time.
Probably like most people, they looked at Yuasa's backlog and then saw that he had worked on this and gave it a watch.
In my case, I watched it when it came out. And back in that day, we didn't really have the luxury of that. Yuasa was very much, at that point, a cult director, not even quite the cult director he would become just 2 years later with the Tatami Galaxy. A couple people knew him as the guy that directed Mind Game, which is also kind of a cult movie at the time as well. Not very well known, but in the same vein of like Catsup. A lot of people sort of knew Catsup as being this crazy movie, man. And Mind Game is just like Catsup, so you gotta watch it. It's just this trippy, surreal anime. So that's kind of, if anything, that's how people were introduced to Kaiba. But I agree with Bill in that no one really watched it. I saw like maybe one thread on a forum I was on at the time just had mentioned it. Like, there's this new trippy anime you should watch, and I was kind of looking for something new myself. I'd been kind of out of anime at the time. I was one of my valleys of interest during 2008, and I was doing other things. So Kaiba was kind of my reintroduction into it. And I knew at the time that it was something special. Just the way that it looked so different than everything. This was, again, a late 2000s. This is very sort of moe stuff, very slice of life, cute girls doing cute things. We mentioned K-On! Just a second ago. It was very much that period of anime at that time. So we think it's you see Kaiba now and how different it looks compared to even today's stuff. That's against a very fertile ground of weird anime movies and more interesting stuff, a lot more risk taking than we saw in the mid 2000s. So yeah, I watched a couple episodes there, kind of like off and on, trying to finish it and watch it, and I always really come back to it. And I'm always really amazed by this show, and just to see Yuasa go from being this underground, dude that only a few people really paid attention to and really knew about, to see how with every show that his reputation increases, with Tatami Galaxy, and then Ping Pong, and then Devilman Crybaby, and then now Night of Shore Walk On Girl. It just seems like he's finally getting the attention that I feel like he deserves. And, we never in a million years would I would have thought that Kaiba would have got localized. It was one of those shows that you pretty much had to watch on a fan sub, and there was no way in hell we were going to get that over here. It was tough enough to get the Tatami Galaxy, and I think we just got that shortly after Kaiba here. It was streaming on, I think Funimation had it, sub only, because there's no way in hell you can dub the Tatami Galaxy. But yeah, Kaiba was even lesser known than that show was, and I think Tatami Galaxy is easily one of the best of the 2010s, coming out in the first year of that decade even. So it's been really great seeing this show come back and at least get localized, and I will be preaching the praises of this show for all of my years.
Well, I think that was a good summation. Unfortunately for you, Tobias, I'm going to have to blow some smoke to you, because I found this show through you, through your surrealism panel, which I love that panel a lot, because it shows different art styles, and not just that anime can have like a typical, for lack of a better definition, house style that everyone kind of thinks anime has to look like.
Yeah. I used to say it was with surrealism that, if I could convince one person to watch a Yuasa show by the end of that panel, I would have succeeded. But at this point, so many people are at least familiar with, in the very least, Devilman Crybaby, that it seems like I've got to up the stakes a little bit. And I've got to get people to watch maybe like Kaiba specifically, or something like, what was it, Genius Party, Happy Machine from Genius Party, or one of his weird out there shorts.
Yeah, and I was just really intrigued by the art style of Kaiba, because it's not like anything that's currently airing, or even at the time, like you were saying, like it was a lot of kind of moe art designs. There was a lot of heavy CGI being used at the time. Like Studio Gonzo was probably at the height of its money at the time, just putting show after show out. Whereas this is completely different, where it's kind of a callback to the Osamu Tezuka type design aesthetic, with the very rounded character designs. And I think one thing that I like about the art style is, for two reasons. One, it gets away from the kind of typical Blade Runner aesthetic of what a dystopian sci-fi has to be.
Yes,
It's not.
exactly.
It's not metallic. It's not. It's more of
Overly busy.
yeah. It's not a cityscape. It's more of an organic view of a dystopian future.
Yeah, it's incredibly unique. You know, whenever you think of things like, you know, these transhumanist themes, like this show is very much a Ghost in the Shell type show. You've got these synthetic bodies. You've got these memories which you can upload and download from one body to another. You've got a terrorist organization and this police force tracking them down. Like, this is all stuff you would see in a hyper-realistic, like, you know, Shiro style, like sci-fi work. But there is nothing further from that than what Kaiba is. It looks like a cross between like a Disney cartoon and like Tezuka. It's like throw a little Tex Avery in there for good measure. Like, it looks, in some cases, it looks ugly as hell, and I think that makes it work in a way that so much better than had it been like a Ghost in the Shell style hyper realistic series.
Well, it disarms the viewer. Because people know that kind of dystopian setting so well that this type of aesthetic kind of lulls you in and doesn't. If you're not into that kind of dystopian story, it's just like, oh, this is something different.
And I think that pushes kind of some of the themes more. We have in episode 2, one of the characters, you know, gets his head blown off. He shoots his head off, and I think in a show like Ghost in the Shell, we've seen a little too much hyper-realistic violence to where we're a little immune to that effect. But when we see it and his brains like fly up in the air out the porthole as little Sal Monroe, it looks horrifying, and it kind of shocks you in a way that realistic violence wouldn't.
Yeah, the art style for this show is in contrast to the content that it presents the viewer.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it also kind of helps the viewer digest the very hard at times subject matter that is illustrated within Kaiba. Just for curiosity's sake, have any of you experienced any of Tezuka's works, whether that be his anime productions or his manga?
I mean, like Astro Boy.
Yeah, like
that's all I know.
Just like I'm just wondering because I would say. His aesthetic is a big inspiration for the look of the show, and if you two were maybe inspired by seeing the show to go back and look at some Tezuka work.
That's one thing I've always kind of skipped over Tezuka. Like, I'm ashamed to say, like, you see Astro Boy, and he always just looked like a cartoon character, like he's there, he's very round. He just seems like, all right, he's a metaphor for nuclear proliferation and the dangers thereof. And
I also think that a lot of Japanese artists then were still influenced by American artists.
Oh, yes.
Still hadn't like fully developed their own unique art style.
Well, I think with the Tezuka, like I've kind of avoided them because I get the image of Astro Boy as being sort of a show for kids, like a metaphor for nuclear proliferation for kids. And I'd mostly forgotten, like not really paid much attention to it, but I did see the Rintaro Metropolis from the mid-2000s, I want to say. I really enjoyed that, and that was certainly a little more in the vein of this harder sci-fi subject matter than I was expecting. And I did randomly pick up a volume of Phoenix at the local library, and I was not expecting that to go where it was. I was thinking it was going to be a little more family-friendly, but nope, it gets hard really fast, and it's talking about human evolution changing, and there's characters just getting capped left and right. Very cartoony-looking happy characters that are just getting like shot up. It was not what I was expecting, and I think that's kind of between that and seeing this, obviously kind of inspired by the very similar, Tezuka styling, has definitely made me want to go back and dig more into that catalog. I feel like I kind of skipped over because, like Edwin said, with Tezuka being like the grandfather of manga, he looked toward Walt Disney and Western styling to sort of make this new identity for what we now know as manga anime style, the big eyes, small mouth style that we're familiar with. But I think he's done. It's very easy to dismiss that as being been trying to emulate, trying to copy Walt Disney. But he's done something I think so much more than what the image, what it looks like on the surface.
Right.
I think Kaiba's a good introduction to sort of that. Like, it looks like one thing, but the theme behind it is something drastically different. Mm-hmm. Now, I think maybe the pacing to Kaiba and the overall narrative kind of shoots off in a way that maybe doesn't quite serve that purpose as a Tezuka, not parody, but send-up, I suppose.
Well, I have some theories about that when we get into that, but I would say because this aired on a premium channel, Wow Wow, which also aired Standalone Complex, so a lot of premium anime that are dealing with more mature themes and subject matter usually end up on Wow Wow, and based off the what I've seen in the production crew, this seemed to be a very personal project for Yuasa because he was involved in every aspect of Kaiba. Because if you haven't figured it out yet at this point, this is an original work. This isn't based off a manga. It's not based off a light novel. It's not based off a game. It's all. It is created by Masaaki Yuasa. He's credited as the original creator.
I think this is the studio he was with at the time was Madhouse, and this is produced by Madhouse. And I think this is kind of the point where Madhouse is putting out a lot of more interesting stuff at this point, I believe.
Yeah, because Satoshi Kon was still alive, and did Paprika come out in 2007?
Yeah, I think Millennium Actress 2006, 2007, something like that.
Yeah,
he wouldn't pass until 2009, so this is still Kon would still be alive here.
Yeah, and they I would say at the time Madhouse was more experimental in what they were willing to do. Back to Kaiba. Like I said, kind of in my summary, the show's it's basically two halves. Where the first half is Warp / Kaiba exploring the world, and the show kind of illustrating the technology concept of the memory chip. And I think that's the strongest part of the show because they're basically little vignettes every single episode of just the effects of this dystopian world and the effects of the chip and what it does to people.
I love the episodic nature of the first half because not only are you introduced to the world and what the characters have to go through in this world just to survive, you can take it one episode at a time, and they're relatively self-contained, so it's easier to grasp what they're presenting to you.
And the thing I like is about the early episodes is each episode deals with a particular theme. So, in the second episode, when Kaiba is on the ship, it's dealing with how the chip can affect a romantic relationship. Because you see the main guy that he meets, Butter, is... Oh yeah, we're going to go into spoilers, by the way. I feel like I should say that beforehand. He uses the chip to basically manipulate all these women to kind of be in love with him, and kind of manipulates them to kind of smuggle all these illegal memory chips across the border, and how it affects relationships with his main girlfriend that we meet in episode 2, or how in episode 3, which I think is Tobias' favorite, which is Chronoco's Boots, it's dealing with how the memory chips affect family, and how memories are interconnected. So, like, for example, the older, her adopted mother, her aunt, desperately wants her memories of how to play music again, and she does this by convincing Chronoco to sell her body, and but after doing so and getting her memories back, she realizes that the memories of her playing music are so tied to her family that it just begins to cause her sadness and pain, and just the interconnectedness of memories.
We think about these themes in sci-fi, and you can just change whatever body, your avatar, however you want. But here we have the very real issue of money and the ability to afford that kind of stuff. So here we see people in the low end that have to sell their physical bodies to be able just to eat and support their families here. And so you got this character that's in this very tough situation where she's taking care of her sister's daughter, but now she's got 2 kids in the picture, and her husband's dead, and like she's disabled herself, so she can barely afford to feed them all. So at this point, Chronica's old enough where she wants to make the decision to sell her body, because obviously she can just get her memory chip later. Well, that doesn't quite work out either. They make the decision just to basically kill her, to release her memories and just destroy the chip, and not have to worry about that guilty conscience. But of course that doesn't work, because you have your conscience as a human being. You don't need that memory chip to be there always as a reminder. You have those memories.
You also failed to mention that Chronico specifically, because she's young, her body is worth more, because it's hard to get young bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
And a constant theme throughout all these individual episodes is just kind of the individualistic desires and people pushing for their individual wants, and just kind of disregarding connections to family and loved ones, kind of as we've seen in Chronico, or I think it's the 3rd or the 4th episode about the grandma, and her 2, I think it's her 2 grandsons or her sons that are basically like just disregard her and just want her treasure. That they think that
the grandfather's treasure, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, the grandfather's treasure, and also just the disregard for kind of rules and order in general. Like in that Chronico Boots episode, people who bought Chronico's body are chasing Warp, who is in Chronico's body by different circumstances, and Vanilla, who is a policeman in this universe, just shoots them dead to rights. Doesn't have to have one single reason. He just kills them because he finds Chronico attractive.
I think that I agree that the first half is certainly more strong, I would think, than the second half, just because it gives you this time to let these concepts breathe. And these more vignette episodes, each one, they all focus on the ideas of the memory chips, but the things they focus on specifically, in episode 2 we see these characters hold power over others. We have Butters and tricking all these people into smuggling these ships. And then we even have the character Parm, who is actually the one that smuggles Kaiba's original body onto the ship. Her whole shtick is that she double loads her memory. She copies her memories rather than moves them into Kaiba. and uses his body to have sex with, to basically masturbate with. And it mentions the fact that this clone ends up killing her mid-coitus, and then Vanilla shows up as the cop, and there's blood everywhere. There's green blood all over the room. And he realizes that, the clone would obviously want to kill the original because it knows that it's going to be killed, as the secondary inferior life form at the end of it. So we see this moment of almost sort of like a crime drama where it just kind of stops. They scramble for the gun. The Parm clone in Kaiba's body tries to crush the original memory chip to get rid of it, and before Vanilla shoots him and sort of freezes him in a place. So that's, again, something that would be a little more mature, would be in something like in a more adult-oriented show, but is it sticks out here, and in the aesthetics that we have in this show, I feel like. We mentioned later in the episode 4, we have the grandkids and the idea of these memories and how the grandmother is so hesitant to give them up. She's hesitant to accept the fact that her husband is dead, and thus she kind of shelters her grandkids. And they don't really appreciate these memories and their legacy from either their parents or their parents' parents. And I think that we look at the grandmother as a very sad character. She also kind of did them a disservice by not being there and not accepting the reality of the truth. Because this show and this society in the show is all about protecting people from their own mortality. It's about protecting people from the harsh truth. And that's kind of what the disparity is that, the idea of death is not existent here. If you die, you can just put your memory in a chip and believe you're going to live forever. And to some degree you do, but no one can really afford the body to put you in. As the constant stream of bodies that are still required, the bodies themselves do die off. And there's just not the resources available for that. In the first episode, they have a whole bag full of chips, and they're just plugging all these chips into this machine to see who it is. As they try to find, I think somebody's brother, and it's like, no, that's just Grandpa. No, that's just Grandma. That's Cousin Lou.
Oh, he's worthless. We shouldn't put him in the body because he'll just cause mess ups for us again. Yeah. Or you see the family that's basically in a grouped robot body that are just kind of stuck together.
Exactly, yeah.
They rotate depending on who's talking, and the daughter of the family is like, "Can we please get a body? I want to go explore."
Yeah, and we don't really know how long they've been there. They could have been there for 100 years. It's the idea of you have this promise of a better life. Just like I feel like it's kind of an ever-present theme in science fiction anyway. You always have these ideas of space travel or warp or, any sort of science fiction utopia, but it never solves the problem, the very human problems that we have. And I think Kaiba shows that, just like in reality, in real life here we have a network which allows us instantaneous information. You can learn more in front of your computer than you could, 20 years ago from access to, an actual library, full college. And has the internet really solved our issues as humanity? No. In fact, a lot of ways it's made it worse. I'd say we have almost greater class disparity than we did, 20, 30 years back. So I think Kaiba kind of touches upon that here.
That's one thing people don't talk about, the consequences of technology. Mm-hmm. We always talk about the benefits that can come from it, but we never look at the evil side of technology. We just try not to acknowledge it.
No, I would say it's been the dark side of technology has been talked about. If people are big fans of Black Mirror, it's a constant theme that's reiterized over and over again, of just the dangers of technology. But
we
never really bring it up in everyday conversation.
No, yeah, I would agree. It's very easy when we think about the internet. Everyone jokes about social media and goofing off with your friends, and I think the internet has done a lot of good for people overall. Again, it has benefits, but it's been co-opted by people in power who would like to sell you, something. Look at Facebook. we all joined Facebook because it was a thing to do. Everyone was on it. It's a easy way to communicate and share pictures and be social with people in a way that you just really wasn't that. I mean, sure, you had the internet, you had websites and stuff, but it was a lot more difficult for people to get to their own site, upload pictures, all that kind of stuff than it would be to do it on a social media site. And it didn't have the same cohesiveness as a centralized place like Facebook or now even Twitter do. But all of that information, all that, that's free. It's a free site to use, but that comes at a price. And it's that semblance of power that we now see, Facebook and then Zuckerberg and all that, they have definitely taken control of the media in a way that is completely beyond our ken as of 10 years ago. I would have never thought it would be like politically influencing in the way that it has been. We've noticed over the past 4 years. It's just wild to think that this little goofy site I joined to share dumb pictures and hang out with my college friends, would impact the world in such a way that it has.
Well, technology always disrupts to some degree, and the keepers of power always eventually grasp it and recognize it. Like before Mark Zuckerberg, there was like a William Randolph Hearst that controlled the new medium of newspapers and of radio and of TV, and I think there's always sort of a struggle when it comes to with new technology. And
you got this power struggle, this political struggle, and Kaiba touches upon that too with the King Warp. We see that more in the second half, but even just the small ways that these benefits impact these characters. Like we mentioned with the grandmother and the grandkids, they sort of cause this crutch for them to, in a lot of ways, discard the humanity and kind of reject a lot of their responsibilities.
It's also just an innate human trait of when a problem is solved, we always want something more. We're never fully satiated, and that's the kind of the gluttony and greed that's within all humans to some degree.
Yeah.
Whether that be buying stuff on Amazon or I just got this latest figure, but oh no, there's a sale. I need to go get this thing too. So kind of as Sully has talked about in the thing, is just we're materialistic people, or we always want different things. We're never fully satisfied, and I think that's a theme within Kaiba of just like we solved. The concept of life and death, but that doesn't really solve the problem of not just the people who are in power, but it doesn't make anyone really happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing I just started thinking about it is it also kind of makes you think about this is in the later the second half is just like, well, what is a person? What is your person's identity? Because as you said kind of earlier in that second episode, there was a clone. Well, isn't that clone a person? And don't they have an identity and want to survive? And that's a very common sci-fi ideal that people have been examining for hundreds of years of just like, well, what is a person? What makes a thing a living soul? And that's kind of a subtle theme that goes out throughout Kaiba, because in the second half, there's a lot of people switching bodies and having different copies of different types of memories. So, well, who is the real person, and which identity is the right one or the real one? Which can, if you get through the second half, can get very complicated, and I probably need a chart watching the second half of Kaiba. But it's a great examination and complication of identity.
Yeah, I think the first half does that a lot better, just because there's not a whole lot of body switching. We have the main character. He goes from the warp body to the hippopotamus body to Chronica's body, and I think that's the end of that until we get
the first half it's easy to follow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is that it's per episode, so it's very easy to see who's what. But then in the second half, they kind of resolves a lot of the background plot in a way that isn't the most direct way to do so. So it can be very difficult to tell who's who, and they even sort of have a couple of the gotcha moments. The plot hooks, I guess. Even like until after you see some stuff. So there's we find out that Nero has been there with Popo the whole time, and one accord, he's so done. But then they show up and there's the final fight. But wait, Nero is also Hyo-Hyo. But why is Nero here if she's also in Hyo-Hyo? But then it tells you, no, well, Popo double-loaded her body, her memories, and, the original Nero is Hyo-Hyo all along, but the new one has been tricked, and it tells you that sort of after, and it makes it kind of more confusing.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know how I really like that, to be honest.
I mean, nonetheless, I'm still glad that Kichi, I think that's the character's name?
Who?
Who was doing, like, the memory transplants. I'm still glad that he did that in the first place.
Yeah. I really liked his character by the end. He kind of went giant robot, mecha.
Gotta keep some kind of anime tropes in the show.
He got that sort of robot arms, and even went kind of like Johnny at the end. So seeing the Tommy Galaxy or even Nighty Shore, the cowboy character Johnny, he sort of morphs into him for some reason here.
Even though it's confusing for me, I like the second half because it really makes you think of, well, like, what is a person? What is an identity? And the one thing they don't really get into is you could look at this through a religious aspect, a religious lens, if you really wanted to, which the show doesn't really examine. The show looks at more all the memory chips through a class identity and how it affects people in like the working class to the upper class, and how it creates that disparity. But it never looks at it through a religious lens, which you could really examine the Kaiba through that, because people have been trying to figure out for a millennial, like, what is a soul, which is basically what people have been, which is kind of what the show implies with the memory chips of just, well, is a person just their memories?
Yeah, no, for sure. There wasn't a very overly religious part, but I felt like the terrorist group, Isodan, One Accord, whatever the official translation is, they were very cult-like. And I feel like with the main character being one of the warp clones, and even Popo sort of usurping that role and sort of taking over, and he's not a good leader by any measure. He very much wants to rule. I felt like maybe was close enough to sort of a religious cult aspect that I think that kind of worked for me.
I would say it's more of a militant nationalist type argument, where just this guy thinks that his desires is what people need and people want, and through my desires and through my wants, I will create a better world.
What was up with the that drink they were drinking?
The poison?
Yeah, because we see the part in Warp's past where his mom tried to feed him the poison, but he rejected it. But then we see the poison, later when he first shows up as Kaiba, and he's about to drink the same. It's got the same cup and the same liquid. It even melts the ground in the same way. Like he and Nero, they polish them all off. So I don't know if it's always poison, if it's just was supposed to be an analog for alcohol in general, like wine, some sort of potent drink. But it kind of made the way they have it, the way it being in the cup, and the way that it sort of melts the floor, like alien style, the acidity of the drink, and the fact that it's later attributed to poison, it kind of made me wonder what was going on in that scene as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this if people want, I would say, really clear answers, the finale does not give you that. It's kind of it's open ended to a certain degree, because at the end there's a big confrontation that kind of basically is equivalent to a universe reset. Kind of like I was getting kind of either the end of 3.3 Evangelion or end of Evangelion vibes to a certain degree. At the end of Kaiba, I don't Tobias, would you say I'm crazy in that notion?
Well, just like you got to bring up Lupin every episode, I got to bring up Indivana every episode. Just how we roll here at the third Impact Anime podcast. I think it does something very similar to Indivana, where it's an apocalypse that is very heavily stylized and it draws you into the visuals, much in the same way that the Devilman did. Both in Crybaby and in the original, it's kind of over-the-top apocalypse that you're supposed to, enjoy what you're seeing. You've got, Kaiba versus Warp. They're like shooting memory energy, I guess, into his brain. It's gotten all bloated, and his head explodes.
It's a cosmic fight that the way I would describe it is just like two giant cosmic beings fighting each other.
And you've got Kaiba the plant. So there's Kaiba the person, our main character, but he's named after this plant organism that just eats memories and just eats everything.
Which they kind of hint at. They illustrate in one of the first episodes of if they don't have a chip to store extra memories, they will just dump the memories as bubbles into space, where this plant Kaiba will eat them.
I feel like it's very much EOE style, where it's something you just kind of enjoy the spectacle of. But, I mean, the ending itself is just, they eat the memory chips, they destroy the big evil, the Kaiba plant, and I think they just, I don't even remember what actually happens in the end.
They basically reset the world where the Warp / Kaiba we've been following and the Nero are living, and a few other people, where it's them kind of resetting the world and her just kind of looking down at Warp after this big fight. And it kind of ends that way, where it's just kind of open-ended of just like, well, the world is reset. We don't know how things are going to change now. So it's up to you, the audience, to determine how it's going to go.
I will say that I think that, sort of the ending, the thing I enjoyed the most was, again, just like the finale of Evangelion, it's very introspective. We've got the main character that's coming to terms with his own issues, his own betrayals, as it were. He's pretty much the successor to the throne, but he's been betrayed by his mother, betrayed by his father, betrayed by what he thought was his best friend, both Popo and Nero. He's constantly been pushed around by people. And at the end, it's just, he's in love with his character, Nero. He really much does love her. And he came to this love before he knew who he was. And it was a very innocent, a very easily come by love, I feel like. And having to get over a lot of what he's learned about himself, discovering these memories and the things around him and the way people treat each other. I think that's one of the major themes at the end, is sort of overcoming these issues and these problems and these situations you've been through to recover your humanity.
Yeah, it's a bit of a kind of split within his own memory of, well, which pathway do I want to go down, and him choosing which way is the way to go. And I loved that kind of open ending because, as we've seen with other kind of sci-fi or mystery shows, that if you tie everything up in a bow, it doesn't really satiate the audience, because the audience will have pre-made ideas of how they view it should go. Yeah. By leaving it open ended, you allow the audience to decide how they want it to end. And that's why, even if the ending and the kind of the second half of Kaiba is confusing, I like the ending of the reset of just like, well, you determine how you think the world is going to be. Are they just going to go back to the way things were?
I'm sorry, I feel like that's a cop-out.
I think it's something to talk about for sure. I do agree with Edmund that like the first half is the stronger half for sure. I don't mind the second, but I feel like it could have been maybe a better balance. Maybe
I feel like there wasn't enough planning in it. I feel like they've had a strong half, but then they knew that they were on a 12-episode time frame, so they had to resolve it somehow.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you two on that. I think I wish that they had gotten more money to space out their show a bit more, because I think the second half is very condensed, where they're just giving you one big reveal after the other for a little while, and it gets kind of like, okay, what's going on? I can't wrap my head around it. So I think that was probably just budget reasons of like, oh, we could only get enough money to do these 12 episodes, and we gotta go.
Yeah, I felt the exact same way with Darling in the Franxx, where like they have all this world building, but then they realize they have like 5 episodes left to wrap it up, and then they just bombard you with plot after plot after plot without letting the viewer like fully digest it like the first few episodes.
This is a tangent time, but did Darling in the Franxx get like 2 seasons or like 26 episodes?
Yeah, it had 26 episodes, but it's the same idea where they spend too much time on world building and not enough time on finishing it up.
I think I would have loved to seen like a 20 or 24 episode Kaiba.
I would too, but the fact is they went with 12. I feel like if the show had maybe another year of like preparing the script and whatnot to make it a bit more cohesive for the viewers.
I wonder if it had been made now in 2020. I wonder if Yuasa's name and Sciencer's name would have been able to carry it a little better. With this being original work, sure, this is Madhouse and they were doing a lot of crazy stuff. Like Bill said, since it doesn't have a lot of merchandising potential, as it isn't tied to a larger property that's already making money, I kind of wonder if that would have, they pretty much could only get what they could get. I think I'm not even sure that I would really want a second season exactly. I don't know if they could. Well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if they could have had enough material to make it 24 episodes to make it still work. I do still would have appreciated more of the Planet of the Week sort of deals where we have these little vignettes that are over and over again, but there still is like 5 episodes finale, and I feel like They do what they do because they try to wrap themselves up in these confusing plot lines. And while part of me does appreciate that, the fact that they're confusing you with who Warp is, and all these Warp clones, and then what Popo has to do with it, and Popo's backstory with, being this, what was he, like a diabetic kid or like an ugly kid or something. Like he had a, something physically wrong with him, and he got a new body even though he's part of this, this group that that's verboten. You're not allowed to do that.
And he had like an Oberstein, like Legend of Galactic Heroes henchwoman that would basically like, I feel like you can lead our way to a better life, and just the machinations of that group and the elders that he was initially working for, and
exactly. And I appreciate like the council of warp clones to sort of roll over Yisodan to actually maintain the status quo to some degree, to sort of get what they want. I kind of appreciate seeing this very idealistic, religious, cult group basically be very selfish to some degree. I like seeing Nero as this this character that could see the good in people, that saw the good in Kaiba, even though he was a warp clone. I liked the fact that Nero was both Hyo-Hyo and Nero. I like the character that they did that became the robot at the end. You said his name was what? Chi-Chi, was it?
Kichi.
Yeah, Kichi. So like I don't dislike any one aspect of the 5 episode finale, but I feel like it does try to wrap itself around these circles and make itself a little more confusing. I feel like it could have been a little more straight-laced. We've got this huge plot. We've got Popo takes over. We've got him sort of unveil himself as this new dictator, but he kind of falls apart when the Kaiba plant shows up. You've got a lot of these plot twists that may have worked in a larger show, but I feel like they could have cut an episode or two out.
If they had more episode, they could have spaced it out and give those reveals more time to breathe.
Yeah, I just don't think... I don't know if I would want a 24-episode version of Kaiba.
I'm not saying 24 episodes. I would say maybe like, hey, how about 18? How about 20?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But kind of bringing back to what you're saying about anime production, it's all in intervals of 12 or 13 based on the seasons. So it's very tough to have a TV show, an anime show that is like 18, a season and a half basically. It's something that really wouldn't be done back then necessarily. Now I think that Yuasa's name could have carried itself now in 2020 with the number of works he's put out, with what Science Art has done, where maybe he could swing something like that. I think obviously I don't want Kaiba to be remade. I don't want a HD remaster of the show by any stretch of the imagination. But it does make me kind of wonder what they would do now, knowing what they knew and the ability what they had now.
You know what? I think the best, if someone said, like, you could do something with Kaiba, is I would love this in a novel form. Like, as a classic science fiction novel. Or as like a trilogy. Because that way you could flesh out the world, continue to do vignettes, and you could kind of give more space for those big reveals. And you could also do it in manga form, which I think could easily work.
I think doing it as a novel would be interesting, because you wouldn't have the benefit of the visuals, the very Yuasa-esque visuals here. And I wonder, as a narrative itself, as just words on paper, what your mind's eye would draw to. I don't think it would draw to this very goofy, ostrich with a fishbowl on his head. I don't think it would draw Vanilla as a big bear-like dude, necessarily. The hippo as being, an actual big white hippo kind of thing.
Well, Vanilla, I would imagine in the text, he's the symbol of, like, greedy gluttony authority, because he's got a big belly. They would describe his belly. They would describe his kind of gruff kind of voice. So I would say, like, the characterization would still be there, depending on if the writer did it right.
I just kind of wonder if, without the benefit of the visual style, if your mind's eye would fill in something that does look more like Ghost in the Shell.
That's true.
I think that, per what happens, I think that it's very easy to do something a little more in that style, a little more realistic, without having the benefit. I think if you were to do a stage play of Kaiba, to someone who had never seen or heard of it at all, I kind of wonder if that's what they would imagine this as being.
Stage play of Kaiba. I'd love to see that attempted. That'd be interesting. But even with all the kind of the truncation of the storyline in the second half, and the kind of the you decide ending, because I think, as Edwin says, there's good and bad with it. Of just like, it's kind of, people can view that as lazy to a certain degree, of just like, you're just being lazy and the audience deciding. Whereas I feel that if you wrap up all the questions, depending on how you answer them, the audience may not like that. I think I'm glad that a show like this exists, because we rarely, if ever, get original works within Japanese animation. Most things are tied to a light novel that's very popular, a manga, a video game franchise. I could probably count on my hand how many original works come out, and they come out like every 5 to 10 years, something like that.
And I think that is something I want to bring up as well. When we see like the 2000s era Yuasa, it's mostly original stuff. He started his work as key animator on Crayon Shin-chan, and yes, Chibi Marco-chan, I didn't forget this time. But Yuasa, sort of his work is things like Mind Game, and then that one short in Genius Party, and then Kaiba. A very Happy Machine and Kaiba look very similar in their design and their aesthetic, and even kind of their theme to some degree. But then we have in the 2010s with Tatami Galaxy, Ping Pong, and Night is Short, we have these adaptations, and I feel like those works are probably better received by most people because they're not just Yuasa going crazy, and because
They're more streamlined works.
well, they're also, well, I don't know if I would say even streamlined, but I think the fact that mainly that they are about real people on this planet Earth, these real stories that are not too fantastical. Tatami Galaxy is very kind of weird and out there, and even itself has a bit of a sci-fi element with the Groundhog Day scenario, but it's all about this kind of narcissist kind of guy, and even if you don't like the main character there, he's kind of a jerk, to be fair. I think we all can kind of relate to that sort of mentality and that attitude. In Ping Pong, you've got this Ping Pong at its core is just a typical sports show, but the way that it's drawn, the way that it's animated really makes it pop. So you have this mix of these narrative structures that are not from Yuasa, that are from other people, that maybe resonate better with their viewers, but combine that with Yuasa's bombastic style, the way he draws human bodies, for instance, and the way the body flows and works and moves, I think ties really well and makes them something better. So sure, Ping Pong has, it was like a novel beforehand, then a manga series. Ping Pong had been a property in itself.
Don't forget the live action movie.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's been a number of Ping Pong adaptations, but the anime specifically gives it something different that we wouldn't have got with any of the other adaptations. Same thing with Tatami Galaxy and The Night is Short. Those are novels, and they already are stories. But the way the anime has these iconic characters, these visual elements, the way that it takes this breakneck speed, you've got sort of these characters, these character tropes that are used. Whether you've got what's his name, Ozu from both, and the god of used bookstores, I think in Night is Short. Where you've got the raven-haired maiden, you've got Johnny, you've got these visual elements that make it more than the original. It makes it more than the original Morihime novels. But it grounds Yuasa by having the story that he did not make. And I think if you look at both Mind Game and Kaiba, I think that honestly it becomes more apparent when I think about it. Because I love both works. I love Kaiba, I love Mind Game. But narratively, plot-wise, that's not their strong suit. Mind Game goes through a couple of different acts. You've got the guy getting shot. He comes back to life. There's the car chase. He gets eaten by the whale. He has a fun time in the whale with the old man and his girlfriend and her girlfriend's sister.
Don't spoil the whole movie.
Well, it just keeps going. And I love Mind Game, but that's only like half the movie. And it just doesn't stop. And honestly, I like it. But by the end of it, I'm tired of watching the movie. It keeps going, man, and it's not. I don't know if I would say it's very well paced.
I would say I like your argument here, but I would say when it comes to his adaptation work, whether it be Tatami Galaxy or Ping Pong, it's an easier entry point for a viewer when it's grounded in some semblance of reality. Like, yes, in Tatami Galaxy and in Ping Pong and in Night is Short, there's some elements that are fantastical for sure, but there's some semblance of grounded reality. And that grounded reality is more welcoming to people than just the straight up weirdness that is in Mind Game and Kaiba. And just the kind of the more abstract approach to those two works, because it's all about how can we relate to it. And when it comes to Night is Short or to Ping Pong, it's easier for the viewer to kind of wrap their heads around than the craziness that happens in Mind Game or Kaiba.
Part of me wonders if maybe he relied on some of his visual styles a little too much with his original stuff because how bombastic it looks. And I'm more than happy to watch a movie just for the visual style and just for the what I'm seeing necessarily, compared to a narrative, a story. I recognize that I'm not reading a book, so I'm perfectly fine with just watching eye candy for an hour and a half. But it's certainly not the high point, I think, of either of these shows, the pacing. And that kind of brings me to, I love these shows for what they are. I love seeing the stuff that comes out of his mind. But I do kind of see why it was only until the new age of Science Saru, these adaptations, until he actually got prominence here in the U.S. and got a little more notoriety.
Well, I think also just kind of I think he shifted from just the Japanese market to I'm going to try and get the U.S. market and do more kind of Western friendly works. I would say even with Ping Pong's art style, which can be a turnoff to some people. That's a much friendlier work, and I think that the sheer visceralness of, probably like for a better description of Devilman, caught people off guard because they hadn't seen Mind Game, or not a lot of people had seen Kaiba, and they thought, wow, this guy is really interesting. I want to see more of his works.
I think when we see Science Saru in and of itself, it's mostly been adaptations. I think Lou Over the Wall is original, right? And other than that, Kick Heart, maybe, if you count Kick Heart as being theirs. It's Production IG did it, and it's a lot of the same, Science Saru crew. But everything else, even Space Dandy and the Adventure Time episode, all based on other people's works. So now that Yuasa's out, now that he's kind of doing his own thing and probably just taking a break, to be honest, I kind of wonder what he'll do and what they'll do from there. I wonder if he'll go back to just, he's always been a fan of animation of itself. You look at all of his works, and that sort of bleeds through. And if you look at his Twitter, he's been posting a lot of little goofy, almost Kaiba-esque little looping animations and little goofy, cartoony things. So I kind of wonder if it's him just, animating for the first time in a long time.
Well, maybe it'll be like after maybe a 5 or 10 year break, he'll come back and Science Saru will be robust enough where they can do kind of the more grounded works that probably bring in the money, and they'll allow him to do kind of those more weird abstract projects that probably don't sell that well.
He will actually do the Yuasa Cinematic Universe. And,
no.
And Hyokyo will show up and be like, I would like to join a team.
We do have one Twitter question from Mr. Clean is a Goat. I love that Twitter handle. You know what? Mr. Clean is a goat. He is the goat. Get out of the way, Tom Brady. Get Mr. Clean in there for the Patriots. What do you think of the first and second half? Have pretty different storytelling. The first half seems to be more based on using the average varying lifespans of people from different planets, while the second half is more on the overarching plot of the MC and the universe. The
main character, yeah.
Yeah, the main character. Which I think we've talked about. We talked about it earlier. Like, Mr. Clean, you're exactly right. whereas the first half is more vignettes illustrating the technology and how it affects people, which is I think we all agree is probably the strong part of the series. And then the second half is more about the main character, how his actions affect the universe and the overall political machinations, which can be a little which is confusing. I would love to see someone on the internet make a chart to some degree. But I think as someone who I loved standalone conflicts, and that show can get really up its own butt in terms of storyline. And same thing with LGH too, Legend of Galactic Heroes. So I think I was probably more used to these weird political machinations and just all the intermingling and the confusing roadways where I just kind of like, I don't understand it, but I'm enjoying it. I think that's just that's a personal thing for me.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't hate any of the part of it. I didn't really hate the second half so much as I just didn't like the pacing, the way it was paced. It felt like they didn't really think it through. And I don't know if that's quite a fair accusation level, since I don't make anime myself. I don't know how the process works really. But it did feel like it was a little poorly planned out and poorly placed.
It's a flawed masterpiece.
Exactly. Well, the one thing that we noticed was it was very difficult to find any background information for the show, besides, obvious. It's a madhouse work. It's directed by Yuasa. We know his stuff. We couldn't really find a lot of, interviews about this work specifically. It all seemed...
It's probably thrown together really fast, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, everything we were able to find translated seemed like it was, Tatami Galaxy Onward, and the surge of Devilman popularity. So it was like the Blu-ray by Discotek, which you should absolutely pick up. Was released about 2-3 years ago at this point. It's only got the show itself. It's got clean opening, clean ending, but there's no interviews, there's no behind the scenes. And it's very difficult to find anything in English.
Is there not even because I know in some of the Discotek releases they'll have an essay written by somebody like Mike Toole or somebody else. There's nothing like that on the Kaiba release.
Yeah. So if anybody has any original works and maybe translated, and a source for that, any links to anything or scans of anything, back from the heady days of 2008, I at least would be very interested in seeing that. So if anybody wants to share anything with me, please do, because it is tough to find good Kaiba information out in the wild.
Yes, please send that information to me as well. Do we want to kind of have kind of a final thoughts or and kind of wrap it up?
Edwin, how much did you hate the show?
It's like a 6 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
It's not a bad show. It's just flawed.
Yeah.
It's good but flawed. That's all I gotta say. And it's got a unique art style. That's always a draw for me whenever there's a new show. I mean, the soundtrack probably carries half of it for me. It's such a fantastic soundtrack.
We didn't talk about the music. We didn't talk.
Now we are.
We didn't talk about the... I'm sorry, listeners. This is a premature wrap-up. We have to talk about at least the opening and ending theme.
It's great.
Those two songs are beautiful. I think they are great illustrations of kind of the theme, because if you listen to the lyrics, because it's one of the few animes that I think it's all English singing. Where it's very tied to the general theme of memory and connections to others. And it's a really pretty song. And the soundtrack and music overall is kind of minimal to a degree, where just they'll have usually to emphasize either a certain character or a mood. They'll have the singer from the opening sing this very kind of sorrowful lullaby when a sad moment happens in the show, or they'll have this horn track that'll play whenever Vanilla is walking around, which kind of fits his character really well. So even though the music is very minimal, I think it is very well. Tobias, do you have any final thoughts on the show?
Yeah, I loved it. I definitely agree that it's got some issues. Maybe not a 10 out of 10. Maybe a 9, high 8, something out of 10. I don't like ratings. I think ratings are dumb in general, but it's I would say it's very high overall. I feel like there's so many little things the show does so well. I think the first episode, the way it just throws you into this, it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you anything about the bird. You don't learn who the bird is until like the last episode.
A lot of the mystery before they get to the second half is through context clues, where you have to you should not be binging this show. do not binge. The show is for, like, maybe you watch at least maybe 1 or 2 episodes a day, and then take a break, or you come back to it maybe in a week. I don't know, because each episode I would say is kind of densely packed in terms of emotional drama and in terms of kind of their theming, that you kind of can't just kind of go to the next episode, and you can't just kind of passively watch the show. I would say you actively have to be watching it. Like, you can't just be surfing on your iPad or on your phone on Twitter while watching the show.
You're going to look up and you're going to see a cat dude with a little dog dude, and they're making bodies. And you're like, what the hell am I watching?
Yeah.
Is it a patchwork cat? What the hell? There's a baby riding around in a car with stilts? What? And the baby's smoking a cigar? What the visual itself are just so out there that if you're not paying attention, you're going to get lost really quickly.
You blink, you missed half the plot.
Well, I think this is probably probably in my top 3 favorite Yuasa things. It's probably like this, and Night is Short, Walk on Girl, and Ping Pong. It would be kind of my top 3. And this is in no particular order, because I think ranking stuff is annoying. But I love this show because, one, it's very rare we get original works with an anime. And it's great to, even if it's flawed, like, I would say this show is to a certain degree with its pacing.
Yeah, it definitely gets points for being so different, both in the fact it's new and the fact that you got this unique art style. It's so different, so unique. You know, I'm willing to accept some of the flaws just to know that this exists.
And if you are like me and loved, like, Legend of Galactic Heroes and Ghost in the Shell standalone complex with kind of complex theming and narrative and examining themes, you will probably love Kaiba, like I do. So I would highly recommend if you like those type of shows where it examines themes of politics and class. And if you grew up loving classic sci-fi novels from, like, Isaac Asimov or Ray Bradbury, please check Kaiba out. It's pretty much available everywhere. My favorite distributor of anime in the United States, Discotech, put out a wonderful Blu-ray. I highly recommend you go pick it up. It's also available on Crunchyroll. It's available on Verve. I believe it is also on Retro Crush, which is like the new streaming services of late, and it's also on Amazon Prime as well. So you can go check it out. It's only 12 episodes. They're dense episodes, but I think it's worth your time.
Yeah, have either one of you tried Retro Crush yet?
Yeah.
Is it decent?
It's alright. That's the job.
Yeah, it's like completely, it's free, right? You can just access it?
Yeah, you just have to set up an account, I believe.
Yeah.
No, not even. Yeah.
I think it's kind of limited. I think there's only like an iTunes, a Google Play app, and a Roku app, it looks like. So you can't just stream it on their website, it looks like. You have to have the app.
They don't even have a website available yet.
The website exists, but it just links to the apps.
I feel like they should have just waited.
They probably thought, well, not a lot of people use desktop, more people are mobile. Even though I agree with you, Edwin, I think they should have waited.
I mean, it seems like a good start. And as people kind of use, people have access to Roku's and streaming boxes. So, yeah, it works as a start.
Just in general, the show is pretty easy to find, thankfully. Yep. So, go check Kaiba out.
Give it a 3-episode rule. If you don't like it after the third one, you probably won't like the rest. So, trying to save you some time, guys.
If episode 3 doesn't wreck you emotionally, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me. Episode 3 is Chronicles Boots. If you're not crying about the end of that, I don't want to talk to you no more.
But with that, I believe we're going to call it an episode. So why don't we go around the virtual table and give out some plugs. So, Tobias, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter, as usual, spending way too much time. My handle is @Reverend_Tobias.
Nice. And Edwin, where can people see your wonderful antics?
Do follow me at Bebop Shock on Twitter.
Yes. And you could also check out, if you were interested in video games, I would highly recommend Edwin's gaming channel with fellow friends and co-founders of Third Impact Anime, Ryan and Will, their channel Mid-Shelf Gaming. It's a pretty good YouTube channel. I highly recommend it.
Didn't you guys just put out an episode?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
But yeah.
And you can find me, myself, Bill, on Twitter at WBForeman, FOREMAN 999 on Twitter, where I am mostly retweeting things and probably annoying people about Lupin, as I do with Tobias in almost every podcast episode.
I don't know what you're talking about, Bill. I enjoy your love of Lupin.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, friend.
I'm glad that somebody gets to enjoy anime around here.
You can also see my written work on our website, because I am the czar of writing here at Third Impact Anime, at our website, www.thirdimpactanime.com. Recently, Sully and Austin have taken up the writing mantle. Austin wrote a really good article about supporting your artist alley, people that we would normally see at conventions, but in this crazy time of COVID-19, almost every convention has pretty much shut down. So go support artists if you can. If you have a favorite artist or maker, go support them. And Sully did a really good article about how to deal with the cabin fever of COVID as an otaku/anime fan. So I would highly recommend those articles. They are very good reads, and I'm hoping to do more writing in the future. I just need to kick my butt to go do it. And I think with that, we will call it a day, gentlemen. Thank you for being on the episode.
And thank you for hosting, Bill.
Cool beans, Bill.
Cool beans.
That's your new nickname. Cool Beans Bill.
No, Cool Beans Billiam. And with that, have a wonderful... Thanks for checking us out, and go watch Kaiba.